All right, so let's talk about corporate governance. I know. Just hearing that phrase probably makes your eyes glaze over. It sounds like some dry, dusty rule book, right? But what if I told you it's actually more like a high-stakes drama? We're talking about ambition, deception, and, well, catastrophic failure. To really get what this is all about, we're going to dive into a story that you probably think you know. Okay, so picture this. It's 2001. There's this company, Enron, and they're an absolute titan in the energy world. I mean, for 6 years in a row, Fortune magazine named them America's most innovative company. 6 years. They were admired, they were praised, everyone thought they were completely unstoppable. A real Wall Street darling. And then this, $74 billion. That's how much shareholder value just vanished. It felt like it happened overnight. You know, thousands of employees lost their jobs, their entire life savings. So this isn't just some abstract number on a spreadsheet. We're talking about a real, absolutely devastating impact on people's lives. So to really get why these rules, this whole idea of corporate governance matters so much, we have to unpack the story of Enron. It's really the perfect case study. It's a huge, flashing warning sign of what happens when the rules just get thrown out the window. I mean, this was a company that was supposed to be a model of success, and it just disintegrated. This wasn't some slow, painful decline. No, it was a sudden, shocking collapse. It sent shockwaves through the entire financial world. So the big question is, how? How does a company that big, that celebrated, just fall apart so incredibly fast? Well, the answer, it turns out, was a massive, clever, and ultimately criminal deception. See, Enron wasn't actually making anywhere near the money it said it was. The whole thing was an illusion, a house of cards built on manipulated accounting and a whole lot of hidden debt. And their main magic trick was something called mark-to-market accounting. Let's call it MTM. Okay, so in really simple terms, think of it like this. Instead of counting the money you actually have in your hand, MTM allowed Enron to count the money they hoped they would make from a deal someday in the future. They were literally booking profits based on projections. And right there, that's the massive danger. You know, normal accounting is based on reality, what things actually cost. It's pretty hard to fake. But mark to market, that's all based on projections, assumptions, a whole lot of wishful thinking. And something based on hope, well, that's incredibly easy to manipulate. So here's a perfect example. Enron strikes this big deal with Blockbuster, remember them, for a video-on-demand service. Instantly, they book hundreds of millions in profit from this deal. The problem? That profit was just a guess about the future. And when the dot-com bubble burst, that deal went nowhere. The venture was a total flop. But that fake profit, it stayed on the books. They pulled this kind of stunt over and over again, hiding more than $500 million in losses. And the whole time, their auditor, a huge firm called Arthur Andersen, just signed off on it. Okay, so this catastrophic failure of oversight really gets us to the heart of the matter, because there's supposed to be a system in place to prevent exactly this kind of thing from happening. So let's talk about the rules of the game, and more importantly, who's supposed to be the referee. I mean, it's the first question that pops into your head, right? With all this deception going on, where was everybody? Who was supposed to be watching? Who was minding the store? There's this great metaphor I came across. The board is the driver of the corporate bus. And that really nails it. Ultimately, the buck stops with the board of directors. They're the ones steering the ship, or, driving the bus. They set the direction, the culture, and they're the ones who decide just how much risk the company should be taking. And on that board, you've got these key players, these guardians. You have independent directors, who are super important because they don't work at the company day to day, so they're supposed to be objective. Then you have the audit committee, which is mostly made up of those independent directors. Their one job is to make sure the financial reports are legit and the company's controls are actually working. And at Enron, every single one of these guardians failed. So as you can imagine, the collapse of Enron wasn't just another bankruptcy. It was a massive, seismic wake-up call. It made it painfully clear that the rules on the books just weren't cutting it. This disaster forced governments and regulators to step in and make some serious changes.
And the biggest result of all that was a new law called the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Everyone just calls it SOX. It was passed in 2002, and its whole reason for being was to close the exact loopholes that Enron waltzed right through. It meant tougher penalties for fraud, a lot more accountability for CEOs and CFOs, and it really beefed up the power of those independent watchdogs on the board.
And, this wasn't just some American problem. The push for stronger corporate rules has been happening all over the world for decades. Way before Enron, back in 1993, the UK had its Cadbury Code. And years later, India strengthened its own rules. The point is, every major economy gets it. You need these guardrails to protect investors and to make sure people can actually trust the market. But here's the catch, right? You can write the best rules in the world, you can create all the laws you want, but at the end of the day, companies are run by people. And people face really messy, complex, ethical choices that you just can't solve with a compliance checklist. So let's bring this down to a human level. Let me tell you about a guy we'll call James. He's the head of operational risk at a big bank. And he finds something really bad. The bank is creating fake accounts, mis-selling products to customers. So he does the right thing. He raises the alarm. But his bosses, they tell him to shut up and back down. Why? Because the bank is under a ton of financial pressure. And, well, they need the money. And suddenly, James is in an impossible spot. He desperately needs his job. His daughter has cancer, and he needs the insurance to pay for her treatment. So what on earth is he supposed to do? Stay quiet and become part of the problem? Or blow the whistle, go to the media, and risk his career, his family's financial security, everything? Or maybe he just tries to find a new job, but that could take a year. This, right here, is where the rulebook meets the real world. Seriously, just for a second, put yourself in his shoes. What would you do? There's no easy answer, is there? It's an absolutely brutal choice. And it just goes to show you the kind of intense pressure people can be under inside a broken corporate culture, no matter how many rules are written down somewhere. And that whole story really brings us to the central conflict here, the fundamental tension that corporate governance is supposed to manage. It's this constant tug of war between the relentless drive for profit on one side and sticking to your principles on the other. There's a formal name for this balancing act. It's called risk appetite. Basically, every company has to decide, how much risk are we willing to take to hit our goals? A healthy risk appetite gives everyone a clear framework for making smart decisions. But an unhealthy one, like what we saw at Enron, is just all about profit, no matter the cost. And that right there is the biggest takeaway. Good corporate governance isn't about getting rid of all risk. Business is about taking smart, calculated risks. No, it's about building a strong, transparent system where that push for profit is balanced with ethics, with accountability, and with the culture that actually supports people like James when they try to do the right thing. At the end of the day, that's what corporate governance is. It's the essential guardrail. It's what separates healthy ambition from total disaster. Yeah, the lessons from Enron gave us stronger rules, but let's be honest, the pressure to grow and deliver profits, sometimes at any cost, that hasn't gone away. And that leaves us with one last, kind of unsettling question. With all that pressure out there, is the next Enron already hiding in plain sight?